He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
And the good news just gets better from there. Hey, let's talk about it on Steve Brown at Center.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, we're glad you're here, and happy Easter.
Happy Easter indeed.
We practiced that and we did it good, and then I messed it up. But listen, it was okay.
It's good.
And I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Sometimes folks ask if I have a ghostwriter, and the answer is yes. On this program, it's our executive producer, Matthew. I do not take credit for these things that I say on this broadcast. In the Bible, there's a ghostwriter. It's the Holy Ghost, and occasionally, sometimes he's my ghostwriter too.
Yeah.
Matthew Porter is our executive producer. You know, Matthew, a lot of people feel they have to dress up for Easter events. I find it refreshing that you're immune from that kind of pressure.
Wow. Well, he took off his Easter bonnet.
Our producer, Jeremy's in the little glass booth. He's a good egg.
Oh, my Lord.
That he is.
Believe you made
That
me
he
say
is.
that.
Rotten to the core.
Rotten egg.
And he wants it in his beer.
That's right. Get my beer.
Our one-man IT department, John Myers, is in the tech bunker. If you think you're tough, you don't know nothing. John eats licorice jelly beans. Now that's tough. And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George reminds us that finding Easter eggs on Easter is a lot of fun. When you find those Easter eggs on Memorial Day, not so much. And Cathy Wyatt is the soft, feminine side of the program. She has prepared carrot cake cookies for us. In fact, we didn't want to do the program. We just wanted to sit around and eat these cookies, and half of them are gone. And I just turned around once, and then somebody noticed that I was the one that ate half of them. But anyway, she's the soft, feminine side of the program, an amazing baker. By the way, is your church having a Easter sunrise service in a graveyard?
We are. We are. We have sunrise service in the cemetery, and I got to tell you, I've been to a lot of sunrise services in my life, and this is pretty remarkable. It's pitch black, and you're singing, you're singing all those cool songs, and the sun comes up over all those gravestones, and it's like, wow, this is the gospel right here.
That's cool.
The only thing better would be if Jesus came back right then and bodies started coming up out of the graves. I'm telling you, it is the most remarkable thing. Oh my
man.
gosh.
Sunrise. I'm going to start going to those when they make them sunrise luncheons.
Yes. How do we feel about
Cool on it.
brunch?
Even a cemetery is not going to get me out on.
it's-
You know, if
It's
you go
so-
to Alaska, that's pretty much what it would be.
Yeah.
That's
Some,
true. That's
Well,
a
and
good
it is sunrise somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah,
every
that's
hour.
true. I have a preacher friend who had been to Romania when they were under persecution, and they finally, the group of Christians wanted a church, and they wouldn't let them build it. And but they finally gave permission if they built it in the cemetery, and they called the Church of the Resurrection, which I thought that was pretty cool. You got memories of Easter? Boy, do I! I love Easter because the pagans haven't taken it over yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. But so far, it's still a little bit of ours. Do you have memories, Matthew?
The one actually, it's early adulthood, early marriage actually is one that jumps out. My mother-in-law, when she was alive, she was a church drama director, and so I
and
write
a
things.
delight, by the way.
Thank you. She was amazing, and so she's all dramatic. I write stuff. We just had these great collaborations. So her church was doing this big Easter event one year, and what ended up happening is, in the end, me in a bunny suit.
Is that same one you wore last week?
That's
here at
right.
work?
It doesn't fit as well. Not enough fur. Riding into the parking lot to see everybody on the back of my dad's motorcycle, hopping off on brand.
Of course.
No
And-
pun intended.
As you would.
And then jumping behind the drum set, and my band at the time was playing music, so little bunny is all rocking out there on the drum set. And like it was pretty fun. I don't know
Matthew,
where Jesus
you're
fit
making-
into there.
You're making this
No.
up, aren't you? You
Is there
really
video
did
of
that?
this?
Yeah, there's
Oh, man.
there's documentation
So
somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah. that was fun.
What about you, George? You got any memories?
There was one in particular. Actually, Ruth reminded me of it. We were. It was the occasion of lunch after Easter. We got together with we're good friends when we were in Miami, and I guess you were there, right? Mm-hmm. And our oldest was daughter was. Kathy
That's always a
remembered
good
it.
start.
Yeah.
Right there.
I expect great things.
Was 4 or 5, and we were saying the blessing and starting to finish, and she breaks into the song, the Lord's Prayer, and she goes, and she hit all the registers. She was going, and thine is the kingdom and the power. And it was not on key. It was not one of those magical kinds of things that you see, and you're amazed at how this young person is singing these. It wasn't like that, but it was hysterical. And she was just as serious as she could be. So, of course, we were trying not to laugh. But she went right on through it, so she apparently wasn't too intimidated.
Off-key life.
Yeah, and it was somewhere between just beautiful and magical and hysterical at the same time. So, I didn't really remember that. No, it was one of the more memorable.
And it was years later that the family whose home we were at, the cassette tape of it surfaced, and it's
documentation of this too?
And it's funny because when you tell stories about things that you remember and everything, it's never as funny because it's like you miss the actuality of actually having been there and all that. That's not true with this. The child, bless her heart, could not carry a tune in a bucket. She was, when he said every register known to mankind, and we're standing around holding hands, and everybody every once in a while, you're looking out of one eye at each other, trying so hard not to laugh. And her eyes are wide open through the whole thing, and she's watching us. So we had to be careful, but that was absolutely... Aside from the leg of lamb that was cooked on the grill outside, it was like the finest Easter Sunday in the history of Easters.
That's the only thing that makes a funny situation more funny is when you're in a context where you can't laugh out loud. It reminds me of a very particular funeral that I went to with my family, and I don't know how we got the giggles. This was a distant relative, and we looked at each other and we're like, we cannot. And so that only compounds on it. You're like, ugh, I don't want to scar this child.
That's like the Mary Tyler Moore clip where they're at the funeral,
Chuckles.
Chuckles the clown.
Chuckles.
Oh, my goodness.
I used that in a sermon.
Yes,
one
you
time,
did.
didn't I?
You were working on something, and I said you got to go to YouTube and look that up because it's like the perfect. You played it at the Cove one year when you were a
was it?
portion of it. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's a funny clip. And we all, we had a guest on not too long ago, and we were talking. One of the things that he said that I hadn't thought about, as you know, when we do this program, we have breaks and the commercials are played, and we in this various stations, and little things are done on the videos and stuff like that. But we have conversations with the guest, and we plan the next segment and things that we need to cover and that sort of thing. And he made this observation. He said, the interesting thing about the time with you guys is that in every break of the program, there was laughter. And he was talking about laughter being a tool that brings you to humility. And he's right. And even like, I want to, the preacher in me wants to say, we're talking about the resurrection of Christ. And you're laughing about it. You're talking about your daughter singing out of tune, and you're dressing like a bunny. I don't even think you guys are saved. And then Cathy joins in and adds hers to it. And then I stop and say, that's Jesus. That's laughter. Because when Jesus is present, people laugh. When he's not present, people get very, very serious, and Jesus leaves the building. And you can't fake laughter. You really can't. You can fake phony laughter, and it shows. But real, free laughter is something that you have trouble faking. And so we laugh a lot around here. And if it's okay with you, we're going to take a break, tell each other our best jokes, and we may share them with you on the other side of the break. The laughter of Easter. We had a program title we could call this The Laughter of Easter. And the reason there's laughter about Easter for Christians is because we're the only people in the world who actually have something to laugh about. We're free, we're forgiven, and we don't give a rip. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back. Thanks for joining us. We're talking to us on this program, the Easter
Did you forget
program.
where we were?
Yeah,
Distinguished panel.
Where in the world is the guest? And by the way, our latest print magazine is now available. You can get your free copy today by visiting keylife.org/free magazine. If you were listening to the last segment, we were talking about memorable Easters. We were going around the table, and it's Cathy's turn.
When I was, I think, 8 years old, that's a very long time ago, so I wouldn't swear to it. It was one of those years when Easter was very, very early, just like it is this year. It was at the not even all the way like the 31st of March, but like the weekend prior to that, about as early as it can get. And we woke up, we lived about a quarter of a mile from the church, and it didn't matter what the weather was, whether it was rain or shine or whatever, it didn't matter. We went to church. My mother and I went to church, and my mother did not have a car in those days, so we walked. And we woke up that morning to a blizzard. I mean, not just a few snowflakes, a blizzard. The streets hadn't even been plowed yet. And of course, you all are guys, and you don't understand this, but little girls back in those days looked forward to Easter Sunday because you had your white patent leather shoes, which you could wear even though it wasn't officially Memorial Day, which is when women were allowed to wear white shoes, but you got to wear them on Easter because that was a big deal, and you didn't have to wear pants or, you didn't have to wear long stockings or anything like that. You just wore little ankle socks, and you had your hat, and you had your gloves and your purse and everything. And my grandmother said, the child is going to freeze to death because you don't wear a winter coat. And my mother said her pride will keep her warm. And I walked, it's true, I walked a quarter of a mile with my mother down the middle of the street to church on Easter Sunday in the midst of a blizzard, and we were one of 7 people there.
Wow.
7 crazy, ridiculous people who thought that Jesus would love them more if they went to church on Easter Sunday in the middle of a blizzard.
And this is in Connecticut?
This is in Connecticut. Yep.
Oh, gosh.
And if my mother were still here, she would say, yep, I said that. Yep, that's the way it happened. She was in a winter coat with a scarf and very warm. Not me. I was in my Easter dress.
You still haven't gotten over it.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Totally.
And I resent my grandmother for not saying, put a coat on the child. But it wouldn't have mattered because I my pride kept me warm.
That's great.
I think your pride still keeps you warm.
I think so.
I think we ought to
think so.
stop and pray that Cathy would forgive them for what they did to her. We could have a mini revival going on here if we did it. Jeremy, do you have some memories?
So, so this one is sort of more recent. So, Lynn's family is all pretty nuclear. Everybody's pretty close by, and her extended family is too. And so we tend to do a big thing, after church on Easter Sunday. And this was maybe 10 years ago, and it alternates who hosts, right? So some days it's us, and sometimes it's somebody else. And this time it was her cousins, and they hosted. And so, there's the ham, and there's all these, little deviled eggs, which is great irony on Easter Sunday, but so delicious. And for the event, for all the little cousins and nieces and nephews, the host couple decided we're going to do Fear Factor. So I don't know if you're familiar with the TV game show Fear Factor, where they try to gross you out with, here, eat this random thing that's technically legally edible, but, pretty gross. So they required that all of the children play this game. And the range of the children is 3 years old to 13. So thankfully it wasn't like on the TV show. It's like, eat a scorpion for $1,000. You know what I mean? It was more like, this is Limburger cheese.
Oh, wow.
Right. This is Braunschweiger, which is, technically like liver and bologna, and it was fantastic. It's really silly and stupid, but nothing says the resurrection of Jesus like a little, I dare you to eat this.
I feel like lunch is about to rise again.
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
Oh.
Like, what's in the fallen angel egg?
Exactly.
When we start talking about memorable Easters, it should be no surprise to anyone that the Easter I remember was religious, and it was my first. One of the questions that Matthew wrote in our scripts so that we could discuss was, what is it like to be a pastor on Easter? So I'm kind of jumping ahead to that, but I remember one Easter, I had been an intellectual. I thought I was an intellectual. And I'd gone to a wacko graduate school. They didn't believe anything, and I didn't either, so it worked. And I was beginning to see some light. And I was beginning to see some light by looking at the resurrection and asking legitimate questions about it. And I remember sitting on Cape Cod. It was my first pastor, a little church, and a little study in the little church. And Jesus showed. And all of a sudden, I realized this is really true. That means there's one more person in this congregation than the ushers are going to count. And I remember being so struck with that that I went out and preached a sermon that was so much better than anything I'd written. It was kind of like Jesus said, all right, now I'm going to show you what can happen when you know I'm present. And it was a great Easter Sunday that I think about. And then the next Easter Sunday, I got drunk. It was awful. I didn't say, never mind.
You started counting on that in the future.
It was just getting a little bit religious there, and I thought, do y'all have family traditions, things that the family did together, that every year it was a part of Easter?
Yeah, we, the Easter baskets, and growing up, it was like, okay, here's some candy and some stuff for our kids, because my wife's love language is gifts. It's a little bit more involved. I'm like, wow, this feels a little bit Christmas level stuff. But something that we do fun that kind of just extends it is she hides the baskets, so they have to go around the house to find the basket.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, that feels also on theme of, hidden, revealed. So, yeah, it's super fun to see them do that.
That'll work. Besides, it's a lot better to get a basket full of eggs than one egg at a time under a stupid bush where snakes are and stuff
Oh
like that.
my goodness! Way to take the
melted.
fun out of everything.
I'm looking at the clock, and we've got. What about you, George? Memorable? Never mind.
Okay, he has risen indeed.
We'll turn to George when we get back. And we're just sitting. This is what we do most of the time anyway around here. We sit around and talk about things. We laugh a lot, and sometimes we cry. Sometimes we're religious, and sometimes we're not. There's a freedom that comes once you know, because Christ is risen, that you're forgiven and you're loved and you're acceptable and you don't have anything to prove anymore. So we'll come back and demonstrate what it's like to be loved and acceptable and forgiven and not having anything to prove. And we'll all lose our jobs. This is our special Easter episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. And if you're enjoying the show, you should see what happens off air. Actually, you can with the SBE Insider. It's a YouTube channel available exclusively to our Key Life Connection email subscribers. So subscribe to it, and you can go and find out what happens in the commercial breaks. Often that is more profound.
Not a thing spiritual.
And, well, sometimes. No, you'll find us praying and fasting.
No cookies
during those breaks.
Can't fast around here.
We were talking about memorable Easters, and went back to we're talking about traditions. And George, you started, and then the break came up, so we never got to it. So you got a memorable tradition?
Yeah, I mean, we did, like, as Matthew was talking about, and that was when I was growing up, same kind of thing. You know, you sort of have the Easter baskets and the candy and those kind of things, and nothing much more elaborate than that, which was kind of nice. I mean, it's like you were contrasting it with Christmas, and it's not like there are, Easter carols and, I mean, they do have some things that are like the Easter sale or, kind of thing, but mostly it's not a commercialized kind of thing. And I think it's gotten more with the church we've been going to for the past couple of years. I think that idea that one of the most significant things we do, maybe the most significant thing we do on earth, is worship. And they put a lot into worship at our church, and we frequently have the orchestras and the choir is pretty much every week and that kind of thing. And of course, that just gets stepped up another level for Easter. Yeah. And the church I grew up in was similar from that standpoint of just, I guess making a big deal out of it before God. And nobody else. I mean, you're not impressing anybody else. So, kind of cool.
It is. It really is.
That's what I remember too about growing up is the big musical choir. I mean, just pulling out all the stops and just that feeling of like, we won. I mean, this is even as a kid, just the kind of the emotions and the content of the song. It was very powerful, very powerful. Very cool.
There's a reason for that. Paul said that if Christ be not raised from the dead, then we are, of all people, the most to be pitied. Mm-hmm. And we really are. Let's pretend that we're all atheists, and Jesus is providing fertilizer for flowers outside the walls of Jerusalem somewhere. Man, I can't imagine. That's when you get the statement from Camus, the question is suicide. I mean, that means everything is meaningless. But if Jesus came back from the dead, then you bring out, you pull all the stops. You bring out the trumpets. And it's on Easter morning, it's kind of a touch of heaven because it's going to be like that there. Big choir, gigantic choir.
You were talking about laughing. I can't back this up biblically or anything, but there's part of my brain that's like, I'm laughing at you, Satan, because 2 days ago you had this all wrapped up. Everything was going according to plan, and you have no idea that all of these horrible things are toward the end of God bringing this story together. And look, it just blew up in your face, and now you lose forever. Forever. How can you not laugh at that? You're like,
That is good.
That's like Tony Campolo's statement when he says it's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
Yeah. What a great sermon. I've heard him preach it 3 or 4 times, and every time I wanted to stand up, speak in tongues, and start dancing.
Yeah.
Because it's really something to remember. By the way, Tony's going through a tough time. He had a major stroke 3 or 4 years ago, and I talk to him often on the phone. He lives in Philadelphia, but he really went through a hard time, and we all thought he was going to die. Family had been called, and then he refused to die, which is so Tony. But he's in a rehab place, and it's really hard. But he manifests a kind of resurrection faith. And every time I talk to him, we end up laughing. And every time I talk to him, we end up talking about Jesus. And but since you brought the name up, I thought I'd say a prayer for him and for his wife, Peggy, because it's not a wonderful time right now, except for Jesus. And that makes it altogether different. Well, this is our third segment, right? Or am I missing?
you got it.
We should come up with
Something religious?
names, or names for Easter carols.
There you go.
Do you have some in your bag?
Well, here comes Easter Bunny here. Lean into Lent, maybe.
Guys, we're going to take a break and hope that there's a cure for this.
More cookies.
Eat another cookie. Yeah.
Eat another cookie. And we're going to come back. You come back with us, and we'll say some important things and some not so important. Hey, thanks for joining us for this hour. We're talking to us. By the way, our latest print magazine is now available. It's incredible. It really is. Blows me away. You can get your free copy, and then you can give it to a friend. You just go to keylife.org/free magazine. You said you had traditions.
You know, it'll be 30 years ago this summer that we moved to Orlando from Miami, and I didn't know a soul except for you and Anna, and so it was like, I mean, you knew people because you were at the seminary, but anyway, so I had to get to know people, and I ended up getting to know people at church with families, etc. And so I started every year having on Easter, having people to dinner and doing an Easter egg hunt with all the kids. And we ended up, between adults and children, sometimes having 50, 60 people at the house. And we stuffed all these plastic eggs like the Friday and Saturday before, and had these big bins, to put them out. And the first year I had people come over and help me, and we put all these eggs out on Saturday, and I'd talk with my neighbors, and they were fine with having them in the yard and in their yards, etc. And I didn't know that you can't do that, because by the time all these children got all these eggs the next afternoon, there was a serious lot of melted chocolate and a serious lot of plastic eggs. So after that, everybody thought, well, she won't do that again. But we just waited, and then the teenagers would, while everybody was eating lunch and the little ones were in the pool, etc., the kids would go out and put them all around everywhere. And it was, to this day, there are some pictures of kids who are now adults sitting under the tree in front of the house with their baskets just beside themselves. These are just great memories that went with the house recently. So
you think about those things when you sold the house?
I didn't until afterwards. And afterwards I thought, because there were some things that transpired around the sale of the house that made it like, let's just get rid of this house. But after all that was over with, I was remembering all those things, and I thought, this is just pretty remarkable, especially when I look at those pictures, and every one of those children are adults now. That's scary.
Yeah, just a note for our listeners up north. We're talking about Florida at Easter time.
Yeah.
It's warm here.
Yeah, my friends in Maine just had a blizzard, so they'll be going to Easter service, with snow, plowing the parking lot of the church.
Taking their little girls and making them walk.
Probably they will make them walk without coats on.
And they'll end up bitter and angry.
Bitter and angry for years and years.
Just the way you are.
Exactly.
Except that their chocolate won't be melted.
There you go.
Yeah, there is an upside to this thing.
That's right.
Never a melted chocolate egg.
We've laughed about traditions and made fun and talked about the Easter Bunny. But, this really happened. When you think about it, it's very easy to forget that this isn't a nice story. It isn't a religious thing. It doesn't have anything. A dead man got out of his grave. I was a pastor on Cape Cod, and we had a guy in our church who was head of the Parks Commission for our little village, which meant he mowed the cemetery. I mean, that was his deal. And he was telling me one time he was mowing the cemetery, and he was cleaning a gravestone, and that was before they had the concrete liners. And the grave underneath him gave way, and he fell into it.
Oh, what?
He said, and he got tickled when he was telling me. He said there were some people driving through the cemetery, looked over, and they thought he was coming out. He said, I've never seen anybody leave the cemetery as fast as they did.
And that was Charles Dickens' An Easter Carol.
Right.
Well played.
That's true. But, somebody got out of a grave, and it wasn't a joke. It wasn't. And when you start examining, Morris wrote a book called, he was an atheist, and he was going to prove that the Christian faith wasn't true. Was going to write a book that would destroy it. And he started with the resurrection. And before he finished that chapter, he fell on his knees and said, my God, it's true. Mm-hmm. And he ended up writing a book that was titled, Who Moved the Stone? When you start looking at the evidence, you begin to realize that God didn't leave us without credible, rational, provable evidence that a dead man got up and walked. There are a lot of things that you could spend time talking about, but one of the major things is that these guys who had said they had seen a dead man, they had eaten with him, they had seen him walk through walls, they had touched him, and they went to their deaths because they said that was true. All they had to say, any of them, they were martyrs. Peter crucified upside down. Bartholomew was hacked to pieces. The only, of the original 12, the only one that lived to old age was the Apostle John. And he was in prison on a not God-forsaken, but on an island in the middle of nowhere, a real awful island. And these guys could have just said, it didn't happen. We thought Jesus was a good guy and said good things, and we got together and we dreamed this up, and it didn't happen. It was a lie. And they all would have seen their grandchildren and lived long, productive lives. Maybe had a major fish business, a conglomerate or something. I don't know. But not one said it didn't happen. And you begin to ask the question, would you insist on a lie if you knew it was a lie, if every time you insisted it was true, you drove another nail into your coffin? Of course you wouldn't. And all of a sudden you began to realize, something happened. And then you had religious leaders. They're always trying to get rid powerful political and religious leaders where their leadership has nothing to do with religion. They don't like the people who see it, and they try to get rid of it. And the Christian faith was scary to everybody. And they could have stopped it. They could have stopped it any time they wanted to. You know how they could have stopped the Christian faith, which took over the entirety of Western civilization within 2 or 3 centuries? They could have stopped that sucker. All they had to do was go to the graveyard and get the corpse and present it and say, y'all are full of it. But that never happened. You think maybe that's because there wasn't a corpse? May have been. And there are 1,000 other things to examine when you talk about it. And if you're not a believer, maybe you ought to look at some of those things. And if you are a believer, look at them again. And then dance and sing and be filled with joy and laugh, because he is risen. He is risen indeed. Hey, we got one more segment, a short one, so don't turn off your radio or your computer screen, because we're coming back. Spending this hour with us. In case you didn't know, Key Life has added a new podcast called Simply Sermons. And you can find it on the Key Life app, on your favorite podcast platform at keylife.org. Just do it, keylife.org/Simply Sermons. It's been a good hour, hasn't it? Just sitting around and talking about it. Mm-hmm. We didn't do a lot of religious stuff. You do enough so you don't feel guilty at the end. You can't do a Christian program and not say a word about Jesus on occasion.
I think you did.
We had cookies. That was a religious experience.
Listen, it was
Yes.
for me too. Listen, I know you guys didn't get to do that, because when you sit at our table, it's an imaginary table and an imaginary seat. But if you'd sat at the real table, at a real seat,
At
you
the
could
big
have had
people's
some
table.
carrot cake cookies that were for that you could die for.
Should put the
they're
recipe
just
up.
good.
We can do that.
All right. So you guys check that out. We'll put that on the YouTubes.
Will you really do that?
Sure.
Okay.
I stole it from
make
somebody
these
else.
and
So
trust me
Have
on
them
this.
post their pictures of the cookies they made.
there you go.
Hey, all
Hey,
right.
good idea. Who's going to be here next week?
Next week, a first-time guest for us. His name is Joel Mutamale, and he wrote a book titled The Hidden Peace, Finding True Security, Strength, and Confidence Through Humility. Go figure on that one.
How do you write a book on humility?
And not attached to the end of it and how I attained it.
That's true.
Same way you're talking about self-righteousness and don't get
I
yourself in
know.
a jam.
That's true. And you all,
Exactly.
You write this stuff on self-righteousness, and you're feeling so good, and thinking, man, this stuff is so good, and then you realize that's because of self-righteousness. Dang it! And then you have to repent publicly. It's not worth the sin.
I did a great job covering this subject, didn't I?
Better than anybody else.
So we're going to talk about humility and how a particular author, you're going to like him, by the way. He's a good guy, has a PhD, but he gets the fodder down so the normal people like us can understand. Well, we've run out of time,
Well,
and I don't have any more to say.
Just as I am.
well, you were going to
The Easter
Easterize
Bunny.
some hymns, like
Oh, carols.
like
Oh, Matthew's already made a
Oh
list.
Lord, oh Lord, how excellent is your name. Oh, happy day.
That's all you
One that I
got?
do at the,
That's it, huh?
That's it.
That's
this is
all
hard
you
work. More cookies.
Guys, I'm
gosh.
sorry. We should have ended early. But we're going to end now, and we're going to come back next week. Same time, same place. Hope you join us. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. That gives you a wide, wide berth.